I'll be sharing my screen. Just a minute. All right. So today we'll be looking at um IT vendor and performance management, which is part of CISA Domain 2. So very quickly, it is important to note that Domain 2 carries 70% of the syllabus. Okay. And as much as it carries 70%, you also need to be informed that you cannot underrate it. Okay. Let me put it this way, that you do not have any part in CISA, any part in the syllabus that you need to underrate. Okay. Every part of the CISA syllabus is important to actually understand. Okay. And in as much as you understand every part of the syllabus, it keeps you abreast of what to do when you get to the exam. Once you understand those topics, you understand the application, then you are rest assured that when you get to the exam, you can tackle those questions conveniently. Okay, so you don't need to underrate any of it, regardless of what weight it carries within the syllabus. Okay. So like I said earlier, I'm going to be taking the part B part, while you have another tutor that will be taking on the part A part of the syllabus. But today we'll be talking on the IT vendor and performance management. Okay. So um when we hear, I believe we all have this summarized story, right? This summarized material. So I was speaking from the CISA manual itself, the 28th edition. I believe we all have that. Okay. So this is just a summarized part for us, but I was speaking more detailed step by step into the CISA manual. Okay. And I also believe that this call is being recorded. So you can always get the recordings to have a watch and playback after the session. Okay. So just rest assured that we'll be trying as much as best to break it down. Okay, because these are things that we have seen that has happened in real life applications. Okay, so the system manual is not a theoretical manual that you just read and you say, oh, this thing will it be applicable in the real life? It happens in the real life. Okay, these are things that we have seen as IT auditors that has happened in real life and will continue to happen. Okay, so you just pay attention and then get the understanding from us. Okay, and this where you probably feel challenged, where you don't understand in the course of the lecture delivery. We just coming back. You can signify, raise your hand, and then we recap, and then we explain again. And when you have questions as well, please do not hesitate to let me know. Okay. So we're speaking to IT vendor and performance management. So when we hear vendor, what comes to our mind? Okay. From the part of just a normal, just remove IT part now. Let's just stick to vendor itself. When you hear vendor, what comes to your mind? You start thinking that, oh, these are people that you do what, that you relate to. These are people that you probably they supply you. Okay, so if I'm a business owner, I have those that we call suppliers. So those suppliers, you can call them vendors. Okay, they are the ones that probably they supply me by printing materials. They probably supply me shirts. They supply me some manufacturing materials that I use for my production, and so on and so on. You can have them as those are your vendors in the layman words. Okay. Now let's bring it to IT. When we speak to IT vendors now, we are speaking to those um we are talking to those your suppliers, all right, that are responsible for supplying you items, and not only supplying items, some of them also help you to do some installation within your IT environment. All right. So take for example, your organization wants to bring on board a new software. So I believe in your organization, you use one software or the other. So let's say you're using maybe an accounting software in your organization, all right, maybe it's Sage or something. You have been able to purchase that application from a particular vendor, all right. Now, the vendor now comes into the organization to do what? To help you do what? Installation of that application. So those are your vendors, all right. They have access to the application at the point of when they came on board to, at the point when they came on board to install the application. Also, you also have some vendors that because you do not have the in-house expertise. So when I say in-house expertise, I'm saying that in your IT department, for example, you do not have people that know the nitty-gritty. That's you don't have people that knows the in and out of the application. All right. So you will still probably require those vendors to help you run the maintenance of the application. So probably when the application runs into problem, you can call on them and then they do what they help you to fix it. All right. So according to CISA says that IT vendor and third-party risk management have become major concerns for enterprises. Why? Because we have an increased reliance on products and services offered by third parties, all right, which increases the probability of security incidents, data breaches, and other risk exposure. Okay, so if you have your data manual, which you can open it, right? So we are speaking to IT vendor management. That's on your data manual, page 143. Okay, you can open it while you flow along with me. So why is CISA saying that IT vendor and third-party risk management is becoming a major concern for enterprises? It is because organizations are now relying on third-party service because they do not have, just like I said earlier, they do not have that in-house expertise to take over those activities. Now they are relying on third-party vendors to manage and continue to maintain this software for them. And when we say, where are the risks now coming from? So the risk is coming from, for example, what happens when you leave your home to, so let's say somebody comes in to probably help you fix something within your apartment, and then probably because it still needs some ongoing maintenance along, you now give your key to the person, right? To say, whenever I'm not at home, you can come into my apartment to fix or to continue the maintenance of what you have done. Between you and I, we know that your mind is not at peace because giving somebody access, even if you are the one giving the person the access, wherever you are, you still have that mind that, oh, I'm giving this person access to my property. It means that one way or the other, what if the person does something I would not like within my environment? Okay, so the same way you are looking at it, giving somebody the key to your apartment, the same way it happens in IT. You giving somebody access to your application still means that there is a risk that the person can probably do what you probably don't like within your environment. Okay, so now CISA is now saying that for you to now mitigate those risks, all right. So CISA is saying that for you as an IT auditor, looking at the IT environment and you discover that you are relying on third-party vendors to carry out your activities, carry out your engagement, how do you now manage these risks that we are talking about within your IT environment? CISA is saying that first thing you need to do is before you perform risk assessment of all potential IT vendors before awarding contract. Okay, you perform what risk assessment on all potential IT vendors before awarding contract. And what does that mean? What does that mean? When we are saying you are performing risk assessment, we are saying that you want to do some due diligence, all right, to check who are those that have actually probably used the service of the vendor before. Okay, what are those services that the vendor are going to be performing? Okay, and how are you going to ensure that those services that the vendor is going to be performing does not actually what impact your organization environment? Because before the vendor actually came into your environment, you have probably been using some tools before, some applications before in your environment. So now that the vendor is coming into your environment, how do you now ensure that the vendor does not what impact some other resources within your environment? Now, CISA now say for you to do that, you need to include something we call right to audit. Right to audit. So when we say right to audit clause, we are saying that within the contract, we are going to draft with the vendor. All right. So most of us will have something we call SLA. When we say SLA, we are talking about service level agreement. Service level agreement. And what does that mean? That service level agreement just means that this is the document that spells out the relationship between you and the vendor. That is, this is what is expected of me as the organization, subletting this contract to you as a vendor. And this is what is expected of you as a vendor who is taking up this contract from me as the organization. All right. Now, CISA is now saying that for you to have peace of mind, for every service that you are giving out to the vendor, you need to include something called right to audit. And that means that you have the right, okay, to audit what the vendor is actually doing for you, okay, by looking at the resources, that the vendor is purchasing for you, looking at what the vendor is giving to you, and then auditing it correctly to confirm that it meets expectation, and that the vendor is not misusing or mismanaging your resources. So that right to audit protect your site as an organization. Okay, so that is what we refer to as right to. That's what we refer to as right to audit. CISA is also saying that aside from you including right to audit, there's something also called providing minimum access to vendor. Don't say providing minimum required access to vendor. We're just saying that giving the vendor just what is required for them to perform their function. So, in your organization, you have different departments. If you are used to ERPs in your organization, we always say, yeah, we are talking about enterprise resource planning. And that means that for companies that use applications such as Microsoft Dynamics 365, we are using Oracle applications, we are using Sage, so much and so on and so on, and even some other special developer applications. You know that you do not have the same right as everybody. What Mr. A has access to is different from what Mr. B has access to. All right. So CISA is saying that the minimum rights they are going to be given to your vendor should only be what is required of them to work. So that means that in practice, whenever you are giving your vendor access, it should only be that admin access that requires them, that gives them access to that environment you want them to have access to. All right. So even if you are giving them admin access, it should not be able to do what you not be able to probably it should not be able to interrupt your financial process. Probably, as an accountant, you have access to impute some general ledgers, you have access to process some financial statements and all of that within the ERP. So when you are giving an access to your vendor, You want to ensure that the access you are giving to them should only be what's required for them to use. Okay, probably just to maintain the application for you, and probably help you to change some configuration settings within the application. That is all. All right. Now, I think I'm also saying that you should maintain an accurate inventory of all IT vendors and the level of access provided. So we've seen this in practice whereby organizations do not maintain inventory. So when we say accurate inventory, we're saying that to draw up a list, it can be an Excel, it can be a software used in your organization, to draw up a list that contains the list of all the vendors. All right, all the vendors in the organization will be contained inside the list. All right, and then you also now do what? You draft out the minimum level of assets that is required of them. Okay, so for example, you draft out assets for vendor A. The level of assets is probably a basic asset. You draft out for vendor B. The minimum level required is probably a standard asset. So you would have categorized all of your vendor according to their what assets rights. Asaka is also now saying that you remove those vendor assets when the relationship ends. So remember I said that there's something called service level agreement. All right. So the service level agreement means that this is what is binding us as a contract. All right. The service level agreement is saying this is what is binding us as a contract. So when let's say for example, our contract is supposed to be between 1st of January 2026 and it ends 30th of June 2026. ICAN is saying that once the contract expires, you do what? You remove the vendor assets. You terminate the vendor assets from your environment, because if you leave the vendor assets in the environment, what you are saying is that the vendor still has access to your application. All right. When you know that there's no contract between you and the vendor anymore. Okay, so there's nothing like informal when it comes to IT pricing. Everything you are doing has to be documented and aligned with best practices. All right. Now, second now says lastly that you also need to do what, in order for you to manage risk from IT vendors, you need to do what, to monitor and certify all your IT vendors regularly. You monitor and do what, certify your IT vendors regularly. When you say monitoring, you do what, you do regularly monitoring of the services that they are offering you. All right, whether they are missing up expectations, and then certifying means that we'll get there shortly as well. So for each vendor, there are certifications that vendors are expected to actually maintain. All right. So if you look here, we have something called third-party audits. We have something called the SOC audit report, type 1 and type 2, which provides assurance on vendor controls. So when we talk of when we talk of this SOC report, what do we refer to? We are saying that for IT vendors in the organization, all right, it is important that you have, for an IT vendor, it's important that you have an assurance report, such as SOC report, or you can also have something called an ISO 27001 report, all right? So what does this report guarantee? It means that as a vendor, you are presenting this report to an organization, all right? So this gives the organization assurance that you have been audited in accordance to best practices and best frameworks to certify that you have the ability and capacity to carry out these services for the company. All right, that's what that certification actually requires. Okay, so it certifies you as a vendor to carry out activities on behalf of the company. Okay, so we would also be moving to something we call sourcing practices. Sourcing practices. So sourcing practices in ICAN says that this relates to how enterprise obtains. Okay.
Sorry, excuse me.
Okay, Ayo.
The third party audit you're referring to, is it like some kind of certification by
Yes,
the vendor?
yes, yes. It's agreement for the vendor. So when we say service vendor, for example, you want to engage a vendor, okay? The organization wants to engage a vendor. One of the key requirements that you would ask from the vendor is a third party or is a third party assurance report, which can either be a SOC 2, type 1, and type 2 report, or an ISO 27001 report. Okay. And you may be wondering that what if the vendor goes ahead and just draft one report and gives it to me as an assurance report? It does not work that way. So the way this report works is that this report, the vendor would normally engage another third party consultant. For example, it can be a Big Four, or it can be another external audit consultant that would audit the infrastructure of that vendor. Okay, they would audit the value of that vendor. So when they are satisfied with the value of that vendor, then that particular audit consultant will now issue a SOC 2 report or an ISO 27001 report to the vendor. So with that, the vendor can now present that to their client and say, okay, we have been audited by a Big Four consultant or by an external consultant to say that we are satisfied to carry out an engagement on your behalf. All right. So that's how an assurance report works. Okay. So this ensures that the vendor cannot just go and bring up any report for you as an organization. All right. So that's how the third party report works for a vendor. Okay. I hope that is clear. Thank you for that question. So now we move into something we call sourcing practice or sourcing strategy. Now, Africa is saying that before you bring on a consultant, you need to know, you need to categorize your sourcing price and sourcing strategy. Okay. So Africa says that your sourcing strategy should consider each IT function and determine which approach allows the IT function to meet the enterprise goals. Okay. So delivery of IT functions categorized into three parts. We have the in-source, we have the outsource, and we have the hybrid. Now, when we talk about the in-source, we are talking about those functions that are performed by the enterprise staff. When we say those functions that are performed by the enterprise staff, we are talking about those services that are maintained by the staff of the company. Okay, that means the company already has in-house application probably developers, application support specialists that can take on the engagement. So in the cases where we have instance performed by staff of the company, it means that our third party risk is gone, is eliminated, or is reduced. That means we do not need to engage a third party vendor for an instance. What about outsource? Outsource means that these are services that are fully performed by the vendor staff. It therefore means that when we are outsourcing all our services to third party vendor, we need to now perform all of these risk assessments that I have mentioned earlier, all right, which includes our right to audit clauses, the minimum assets required, maintaining those accurate inventory, removing the vendor assets, and also monitoring and satisfying all the vendors regularly. All right. What about hybrid? Hybrid means that we are performing a mix of enterprise and vendor staff. Okay. It means that you have some functions that can be performed by the staff of your company, and you have some functions that can be performed by what? By your outsourced vendors. Okay. In that regard, it also means that for those resources that we are outsourcing to the vendors, we are still going to perform all of those risk assessments to help us mitigate those risks effectively. All right. So that's hybrid. Hybrid means that there are some functions that my IT staff can perform, okay, and there are also some functions that what only the third-party vendor can perform. In that case, we apply the risk assessment to those functions that the IT vendors can perform. All right. So we said the IT functions can be classified across the globe. All right. So it means that we have staff that work on-site in the IT department. Those are on-site, just like we have those that work inside. We have those that work remotely, right? Remotely in the same area. So we call them the off-site. All right. So they will still work within the same geographical area, within the same Lagos. All right. Then we have those we call the offshore. All right. They still work remotely, but outside the geographical location. All right. So we are saying that the enterprise should evaluate its IT objectives and current staffing model to determine the most appropriate method of delivering the IT function, considering the following questions. All right. Is it a core function of the enterprise? That's the question. So we need to know. Pretty.
Yes, thank you very much. Please, I cannot see your screen sharing. It's just only a particular picture. I don't know where it's coming from my hand, Olen. Okay, it's moving now.
Okay.
Thank you.
Okay. So, okay, thank you. So, is this, so I'm saying that you can follow me through with the CISA manual. Okay, this is the summarized material, but step by step, we are taking it, we are diving into the CISA, manual, the 20th edition that has been shared with you. So just follow me through. I'm on page 140, page 143. All right, so just follow me through. So we are saying that, have you considered these critical questions? Is it a core function of the enterprise? So we are saying that there are some functions that are core in the organization, and there are some that are non-core functions. So if this is a core function of the enterprise, all right, and you don't have the resources, can you outsource to the IT vendor so that it does not impact your primary activities in the organization? Okay. Now, does the function have specific knowledge, projects, and staff permit is good? Does your IT staff, do they have that resource? Do they have that knowledge? If they do not have that knowledge, you do what? You outsource. Okay. Can this function be performed by another party in another location for the same or lower price? So this comes when you're now trying to do your vendor evaluation. Okay. Now, I've decided that I want to outsource my services because my IT staff don't have the resources to carry out what I want. Okay. Now, in the course of me now outsourcing it, I will now be considering what different vendors. I have vendor A, vendor B, vendor C, and vendor D, and so on and so on. Now I want to know which of the vendor can do what, can give me the same quality. Okay, the same quality, or can give me a higher quality for a lower price. Okay, and without increasing risk. So we are looking at three things now. Can you give me the same quality at a lower price without increasing my risk? Okay, so now this now boils down to me now knowing what are those this boils down to me first knowing that what are those clients that the vendor has worked with before, and getting assurance that those clients that they work with, they do not introduce risk into the environment. All right, getting that quality attestation from those clients, as well as knowing, now discussing what price can they offer, now comparing this service with the different vendors. Okay, now does the enterprise have experience managing third parties or using remote locations to execute business functions? So does the enterprise have that experience managing third parties? That means from the attestation that speaks to how they've been working with other clients, you would have that knowledge on how they've been managing their third parties. Now, are there contractual or regulatory restrictions preventing offshore locations or the use of foreign nationals? Okay, so I recall that there are some government parastatals that you cannot make it a foreign national to, you cannot bring us on foreign nationals, all right? So you need to know if there are contractual or regulatory restrictions that will prevent those foreign nationals from working on your environment. So for example, we have some organizations that have staff outside Nigeria. Okay, so you need to know whether you have regulations that restrict those people from working with you. So that will now determine how you would contract your work, um, your IT vendor. Okay. So now, on completion of your sourcing strategy, which we have discussed so far, there's something we call the steering committee, which I believe is going to be covered by the other also. All right. So the steering committee, they review and they approve decisions if an agreement is reached. Okay, so that's just like for a committee that sits on IT decisions. All right. So for every decision that is being made, we like IT cannot just wake up one day and say they want to implement something. No, there's a committee that sits on those activities. All right. So those committees will do what they will review and approve decision once you have made an agreement on which vendor you are going with. Now, at this point, you will now need to take the following steps. Okay. Now, define the IT function that will need to be sourced. Which one are we sourcing? All right. Which of the functions IT are we sourcing? Okay. Now, describe the service level required and minimum metrics to be met. So let's say, for example, the organization make use of internet. All right. To make use of applications. Your internet, for example, is a third party vendor like mine. Some of us have heard of people like One, all right, we have heard of people like One and the like. So they provide One internet and the like, they provide internet to your organization. So what is the level required and metrics to be met? Okay, that helps you to monitor them, all right, against what they said they are doing. So what have you said you are going to do and what are you doing? So if you said that they are going to supply me 100% internet uptime, okay, anytime you go below 100%, what happens? I can do what? I can charge you back because you have failed on what you promised me. All right, so you have just failed on what you promised me. It means that I can do what? I can charge you back. All right. Now, know the desired level of knowledge, skills, and quality of the expected service provider. All right, so you need to know the level of knowledge, skills, and quality of the expected service provider. Discuss this at length to say you need to get attestations from those providers, from those vendors that we work with for it to be sure that they have that required was expertise. All right. I know the current in-house cost information to compare with third party B. Okay, so you need to say, okay, so for example, if I want to, let's say I don't want to outsource, I want to bring in resources. Let's say I want to bring in people that can do the application work for me. I don't want to outsource to a third party. So when you look at how much you need, what is the equipment cost that it should take me to bring in this guy into my environment? One. What is the salary I'm going to pay this guy every month? Okay, now compare it with you are sourcing it to a third party vendor. How much, what is the difference? Is it something that is material or should we just go along with the third party vendor? So you do what? You also conduct due diligence, all right, on the potential service providers, all right, which means you are also getting, just like we said, you are saying you are getting these architecture reports, all right, you are getting these architecture reports and all of that. You are confirming if there's any architectural considerations to meet contractual or regulatory requirements. We have said this before. When you have contractual requirement that can prevent you from using those third-party vendors, it's better be spelled out. Then you finally want to communicate these decisions and monitoring requirements will be imparted internal stakeholders. All right. So once you have made your decision to say, okay, after you've done all this evaluation, you satisfy that this vendor actually meets all these requirements, then you do what? You pass your requirement, you pass your decision to your internal stakeholders. And who are your stakeholders? Stakeholders are the management, all right, and affected employees, okay. So you can using this information, you cannot do what? You cannot do a detailed analysis of the service provider and determine whether your outsourcing will meet the enterprise. You allow the enterprise to meet those. You need to go cost effectiveness with limited. So don't forget, you have three things in mind: higher quality, effective cost and what a limited risk. Okay. All right. So now we say outsourcing practice and strategies. All right. So that is that. So this is saying that in terms of outsourcing, if you divide outsourcing as that mechanism that allows enterprise to transfer the delivery of services to third party, which is what we discussed. All right. It said fundamental to outsourcing is accepting that while service delivery is transferred, accountability remains firmly with the management of the client enterprise, which must ensure that the risk is managed correctly with the continued delivery of value from the service provider. Transparency and ownership of the decision-making process must reside within the client's purview. So we are saying that regardless of the service that is transferred to the third party, you need to ensure that accountability relies with you, which means that whatever the client, whatever the vendor is doing within the environment, they can what effectively account for it. Okay. So for example, when you want to create, so I recall that there was a point I did an audit. Okay, so there was this application, all right, where we saw a name of somebody. We saw that name. Okay, so just a so when you see a generic name, let's say just say CYS, okay, and my attention was cut it and say, okay, who is CYX? And then they said that particular CYX belongs to a what? A third party vendor. So the question is management aware of this name? All right. Is management aware of this CYX? All right. Now the button important is the document that shows that okay, management is aware that you have a vendor. All right. So what's the name of the vendor? The name of the vendor is AY. If the name of the vendor is AYH, why did you use CYX? Okay. So what we are saying that we should use the name of the vendor is for accountability so that you can effectively and proactively monitor the activities of the vendor. So when you put the name of the vendor on the application, it was to monitor effectively the activities of the vendor, not the management approving one name and then you now decide to do what to use another name, right? That will not allow you to effectively monitor accountability. Okay, so ethical now says that specific for you, the specific objective for IT outsourcing is really from enterprise to enterprise. Okay, so typically the goal is to achieve lasting, meaningful improvement in business skills and services through enterprise structure to take advantage of the vendor core competencies. Okay, so the goal is to improve your business process and services. All right, through enterprise structuring to take advantage of the vendor's core competencies. So if I know as a business that this vendor can do my work perfectly, and I've seen so far from what the vendor has been to that this vendor can do it already. So why do I need to test myself? All right, bringing in people that will do the work. All right, so I can still bring in people, but that will be probably what later on into the business. Okay, but for now, why not bring in your third party vendor, manage your risk properly, while you now plan on what on bringing in your in-house expertise. Okay, and at the time you are onboarding the vendor, you get your cost benefit analysis. Okay, bringing a vendor will do what would serve me right, and then would give me what a better quality, an effective cost. Okay, and there was a limited risk. All right, so rather than bringing in what an in-house expertise. Okay, so Jessica is not saying that there are various reasons for embarking on outsourcing, which should include what a desire to focus on core activities. Okay, your pressure on profit margins. When you say desire to focus on core activities, you can decide to say this is my core activity, so I want to own it myself. Why the vendor should what to take on the other non-core activities. Okay, all right. And you can also decide to say that my core activity I want to outsource it while I take on the other activities. Okay, so depending on how you are evaluating your business to see whether you have that in-house expertise. Then pressure on profit margin. If, for example, that you know that when you bring in-house expertise, it can cost you more. All right, why not just outsource your services? Okay. Now, the increasing competition that demands cost saving and faster time to market. So it's still the same thing we're talking about. If your vendor can do your work faster and give you cost saving, why not outsource? All right. So we also have flexibility concerning organizational structure and market size. All right. So if you know that outsourcing to vendor, all right, can help to increase your market size, all right, can give you that policy that will let you increase your market size, give your organization that structure, all right? Because, for example, let's say you are a fintech organization and you have limited space in the office, right? So instead of bringing in more people, you can do what? You can decide to what? Outsource some of your functions to vendors. So you know the vendors don't come to your services, all right? Probably maybe once in a while, all right? So that helps you to what? That helps your organizational structure, all right? In terms of quality delivery as well, it tells your market price. So it tells your market size. So Ethica is saying that an isolator should determine whether the enterprise considered the advantages, disadvantages, the business risk, and risk reduction options, all right, developed in the outsourcing priorities and what and strategy. So all of this that we have talked about, all right, so it's not left for an isolator to examine whether the enterprise has considered the advantages, all right. You know, we have said that whenever you want to bring on board a vendor, you have some risk assessment that you need to do. All right. If at the point of doing your risk assessment, you discover that it's better to have it in-house or it's better to have an hybrid, then you do what you advise the organization on which one is what is better. Okay. So we have a list of advantages and disadvantages for the organization. So in terms of advantage for outsourcing, it's saying that when you outsource your activities, it can help you achieve economic of scale by deploying reusable component software. It's saying that instead of you developing software yourself, you can just leverage on third-party vendors that have already developed and then you scale out. Okay. Now, it's saying that a vendor are likely to be able to devote more time and focus more effectively and efficiently on a given project than an in-house staff. Because when you bring in an in-house staff, we know that when you bring in an in-house staff, you will tend to use them for multiple things, okay, which can distract their attention. But when you use a vendor, that's what you are bringing them in for, and they are focused on that, okay. We are also saying that an outsourcing vendor will likely have more experience with various problems, issues, and techniques than in-house staff, you know, because you know even before you are using because even before you bring in the vendor, you have done your due diligence, okay. You have requested for some reports. You have asked for some attestation reports from the client that they have worked with, okay. That has helped you to know whether that vendor has that experience they are looking for, okay, and whether they solve similar problem issues, all right, whether they have that technique better than yours. Also, in terms of disadvantage, they are saying that your cost can exceed customer expectation. That means when you look at cost, this is probably this is one is based on what is based on when you compare when you do your cost management analysis, okay? Based on cost, if the cost sometimes are more than your expectation, okay, it can also lead to loss of internal IT experience. Okay, so you know, if you bring in an internal expertise, you know, you can bring in some other trainings under them. This can help your IT team to develop core expertise in that subject matter. Okay, you can also have lots of control over IT because when you outsource some of these your core functions out, you have limited control over them. Whatever they do is subject to what is in your SLA agreement. All right. You can also have vendor failure. So let's forget that you have binding agreement with them or whatever. So you can have vendor failure. All right. So because if you have vendor failure, what will happen is that you can activate your clause. Probably they respond you, all right, you stop using them. But at that point, it has impacted your business activity. So let's say you have an application, all right, where your customers, for example, look at the way we have some of these fintech applications that where you can go to order food, you can go to buy stuff, junior and the like. So let's say that a vendor helps you to manage that application. And let's say that that application now went down for, let's say the application went down for 5 hours, okay, and your customers are unable to order food and the like, okay, or even a bank. Let's say you are sold something like that to a third party, your customers are unable to make transactions, they are unable to order food, okay, in the next 5 hours. So what do you think is going to happen? You lose customer, okay, they are going to lose revenue, and you might lose your reputation as well. This is non-quantifiable in terms of cost, okay. Now, forget that you're going to have something we call chargeback. That means you activate that clause in your contract. But what has happened. The vendor has failed to meet your expectation. Okay. And of course, you have limited freedom access. You know, because they are vendors. They keep their source code. If you develop an agreement for you, they keep their source code. All right. So they are going to discuss that. They are going to discuss that your teacher is going to discuss that very well in the source code. So you discuss that with them. So they keep their source code effectively. Source code is just like saying that is my intellectual property. All right. So you don't have access to it. So you have limited product and so much and so long that you have under the advantages of outsourcing. So you need to look at what is best for you as an organization, which you can help your to do as an IS auditor. Okay. All right. So all right. So now, even if you there are some regulatory concerns that you need to also look at
Excuse
when
me.
you are
Sorry. Okay.
okay.
The audio is not very, I don't know if it's just me, but you break off sometimes and it's not so clear. Just feedback. I don't know if it's only on my own side though.
Okay. So okay, thank you, Larry. So is that the thing for others as well?
Yes,
Can
for
you
me a bit.
for you to
Yes,
what?
for me as well. Yes.
Can you
It
hear me?
breaks at some point, you pause and you continue then.
Okay. Sorry. But can you all hear me now?
Yes, I can.
Yeah.
Yes, I can hear you
Yes,
now.
yes, we can hear you now.
Okay. All right. Thank you. So we are saying now that in terms of onboarding vendors, there are some requirements that needs to be made in terms of regulations, all right, in terms of best practice, in terms of framework that needs to be met. Okay. So for example, we have service quality delivery, all right, which includes something we called IQ, all right. IQ means infrastructure infrastructure library, all right. So information technology infrastructure library, IQ, and ISO methodologies. So this spells out what is required what is required of you, all right. But rest assured, Africa is not going to ask you, Africa is not going to start asking you what is inside IT, what is inside ISO or methodologies. Okay, so you are not going to get that. But it's important to know that as an IT auditor, you need to know that there are some of these best practices framework that help you whenever you are onboarding with vendor. They spell out what's required of a vendor. Okay, so they also tell you that whenever you are having a contract with a vendor, you should have an SLA, all right? And whenever there's a breach, you activate the clause in your SLA and follow up ideally with that clause in your SLA. Okay. All right. So it also says that it states all those performance parameters that must be met, such as the minimum processing time for transaction or minimum hold time for contractor, which those I just said that, for example. So please, when you cannot hear me, or when it's notice, let me know if I will know probably whether to switch my network or not. All right, just let me be aware. Okay, so in terms of performance parameters, it's saying that. So, for example, I'm saying that in your organization, you make use of internet connectivity. So when your internet service is down, what happens? You're unable to perform your functions. Okay, so we are saying that in terms of minimum performance, you need to hold them accountable. All right, what is the minimum level requirement that that this service needs to be met? So when it goes down, what happens? So you need to define those criteria. Okay, you incorporate capacity management criteria, which means that when you are utilizing your storage system, for example, your application server, so your application has a limit schedule, probably just the same way you have it on your mobile phone. It's relatable. When you have when your mobile phone is running out of storage, what do? You probably get what? An external device, that can probably take on that, all right, or you change your device, all right. So the same way you have a capacity management within when you are outsourcing to vendor, all right. So it's either you upgrade that particular application server, all right, or you do what? Or you change it. So you need to have that. Then you also need to have something called a dispute escalation or resolution process inside your SLA. I'm just saying that when you have issues, for example, the example I gave earlier that, for example, the fintech where you purchase food, and for example, you as the owner of the business. So, for example, you as the owner of the business, you've outsourced it to an application vendor to help you manage it. Now, when you have such long hours of downtime, how do you escalate? How do you solve those resolutions? All right, so those are also embedded. Then you also have the NDA agreement. So what we call NDA agreement is what we call a non-disclosure agreement that spells out how you protect your information of your client. All right. So, for example, for those of us that are logged into our banking application, we provide our BVN, we provide our NIN, we provide our personal identifiable information or your PII, provide everything to the bank. So same thing for the vendor as well. So when you have those interactions with the vendor, it means that they have access to your client information. So how do you protect your client information such that the third party vendor does not release your client information to outside? All right, so you need to put in those agreements. Okay, so you need to set those agreements. So now the question is that aside from those agreements, what other things? So we are saying that aside from those agreements, what other things do you require as a third party vendor? So as a third party vendor, what else do you require? All right. So what we are saying is that aside from SLA, there are some certain things that you require to get from a third party vendor. Number one, we have the SOC 2 report. The SOC 2 report, it can either be type 1 or type 2. You can also have the standards for attestation engagement, SFAU, okay, as required by ICAN. You also have the SAS 70 report as required by ICAN, all right. So you also have the ISA 3402. You can also have the ISO 27001 report. Okay. So now, what does this report actually mean? What do they signify? They are just saying that, like we've explained it briefly earlier. They are just saying that what is that assurance that you can give to me that like I can trust your service. I can trust that the information security of your service is well tightened. I can trust your service delivery that you are not going to do what you are not going to compromise rather in your what in your service delivery. All right. So that's what we mean. That's what that's what we mean when we come to our service report that we normally require. Okay. So now, what does a sub one, sub two, sub three report? Um what do they mean? What do they mean? So when we say a sub one report, we are saying that these are reports on the service organization system controls that are likely to be relevant to the user entity's internal control over financial reporting. Okay, so Asaka is saying that we have something called SOC 1, we have something called SOC 2, we have something called SOC 3. Now, your SOC 1 report is saying that as an organization, what are those service system control that are likely relevant to the user internal control over financial reporting. So some of us have heard something they called ICFR, that's internal control over financial reporting. So here we are with the CISA as well. So what does that mean? We're saying that
Excuse me, sir, what's the meaning of soak, or what's the full meaning of soak?
hello, hello, somebody saying something.
What's the meaning of soak?
So okay, it means service organization control. All right, so it means service organization control. All right, so Asaka is saying that we have SOC 1, SOC 2, and SOC 3. So in SOC 1, we are saying to those internal controls over financial reporting. And what do they mean? We are saying that in your financial system, all right, in your financial system, you have different controls in your financial system. Take for example, you have your financial system, you have something such as you have something such as payables, you have something such as receivables, you have something such as foreign exchange services. Okay, you have some other functions within your financial system that you have in the accounting company in your organization. Okay, so those are your financials. All right, so we're not saying that those system controls that are relevant to those controls, those system controls are relevant to those functions that are performing. What are those reports that the organization can give to you? Okay, so for example, let's say that you want to onboard an application. All right, now you want to require a SOC 1 report from the vendor. All right, so what the SOC 1 report will be telling you is that, okay, within the vendor's IT control, within the vendor IT space, in the application that they are onboarding for you, these are the controls that they've embedded inside. Okay, in terms of payables, they've ensured that there is proper segregation of control. Okay, they've ensured that their expense limit. Okay, you cannot just pay more than what is required. They've ensured that there's access limitation. All right, they've ensured that you cannot perform what I want required from you. Okay, so they put in all of these controls within their system, and that's what gives the assurance that, okay, this organization, I can trust them to give them my work. Okay, now when we now come to SOC 2 report, SOC 2 report is saying that.
Excuse me. Sorry, excuse me.
Okay.
So a quick question on SOC 1. So SOC 1 is a report is it report given provided by the vendor to the organization stating that they have these levels of control as affecting their financial reporting? Is that it?
Yeah, so it is provided by it's normally provided by the vendor, okay, to say this is the this is the level of system control that we have in the organization, in our organization, because it's just like if I want to follow you by if you want me to follow you by example, you need to demonstrate to you what you have done within your own environment. Okay, so you need to demonstrate to me that you yourself, you have this level of control within your environment before I will say I want to partner with you. But if you cannot demonstrate to me that I want to onboard your application and the same application I want to use, you don't have that same level of control within your own entity, then I do not have guarantee. I do not have guarantee on your application that it is the best for me. So that's the point will now tell me as an organization that okay, me onboarding this organization, they have that level of control that I also require within my own organization. All right.
Thank you.
Thank you. So now for SOC 2 report, SOC 2 report is now saying that aside from those application controls, those financial controls that you have tested, we have some IT controls now, because within your IT control, you have a lot. There's something we call confidentiality. So you must have read, there's something called the CIA chart. I don't know, probably yesterday you did Domain 5, probably you touched on it. There's something we call the CIA chart. We call it confidentiality, integrity, availability. You also have privacy. Okay. So this control, this SOC 2 report is saying that in terms of confidentiality, we are saying that your organization, you as the vendor, your organization, have you ensured that you have properly encrypted your information, your information that is within your enterprise? Have you ensured that you've encrypted it? When we say encryption, I know you see this concept in Domain 5, but when we say encryption, we're just saying that encryption is the conversion of plain text into action algorithm. So it's just like saying that because I don't want you to understand what I'm writing, I now decide to unscramble the word. If this one is even more than unscrambling, it's just like saying to you it is rubbish, but to who is receiving the information, it is the perfect information. Okay, so encryption just means that I am transferring, I'm trying to change a complete word that makes sense into an unscrambled word that does not make sense. Okay, so when we say what is the best way to ensure confidentiality in any given process, it is encryption. Okay, encryption means that you are encrypting a meaningful information into an information that does not make sense. All right, that's just like the best way you can put it. All right, such that even when an hacker hacks into the environment, they still do not understand what they are looking at. Okay, so that's what. So I think that does the service vendor, do they have that confidentiality practice within their information? Now we are saying that in terms of integrity, do they have some controls? This integrity, you would report it. I probably think this is under domain 1. Yeah, you see it's under the integrity control. So integrity control is saying that within your information system as a vendor, do you have a policy integrity such that whenever we do transactions, are you sure we are going to receive, we are going to be able to generate accurate reports? Okay. Are you sure whenever we save information, by the time we go there, are we going to still be able to meet that information? That's integrity. Integrity just means that whenever I need my information and I call out my information, I will get an accurate data. So let's give an example that you go into your bank application. Let's say you spend 100,000 over the past 10 days, and then you want to now print out your bank statement, and then you are discovering that what you spent is over 100,000. What happened? You raise alarm. What is going on here? All right. So what happens in that regard is when they say system functionality, what happened in that regard is an integrity, is a breach in integrity control. All right, if truly you spent 100,000, and what you are seeing at the end of the day is more than 100,000, then what has happened is a breach in integrity control. All right, so you want to see that control within that report. So in that report, you will see an attestation that shows that this is what they've done to ensure that they have that integrity control check within the application. Okay. Now, there's another control we call availability. Availability means that at every point in time, your service must be available. That's just the best definition for availability. At every point in time, whenever I need an information, whenever I need my data to be on, whenever I need access to this application, it must be available. So let's take, for instance, so we've had many instances whereby people go to the hospitals, they want to make payment from the application, and they're unable to make payment to application. And the hospitals are saying, if you don't make a deposit, we're not going to treat your patient. We have had those instances, okay? So these are what this is part of an availability issue. Okay, so we are now saying that as an IT auditor or as an IS auditor, before I give you, I outsource my job to you. Okay, I want to see in your SOC 2 report also that you have demonstrated that your services is uptime 99.9999. Okay, so I want to demonstrate that at any point in time, your service will always be available. Right, because we can have emergencies whereby I want to have access to my information. So that's why anytime of the day when you want to have access to your banking application, it is always available. That is availability. All right. So it must always be available. That is availability for you. Then privacy. Privacy means that this data that you are holding, all right, I'm aware that you are going to be making use of my data. You're going to be having access to my customer data. Okay. Now, this my customer data that you're going to be holding, do you have controls to ensure that this customer data are not going to be exposed to third party? I'm sure most of us are aware that we have the data protection right very ravaging for right now. So if you expose my data, because as a customer of a bank, or as a customer of any organization, I have access to my data. All right, and anything you use my data for without my right, I can sue you. And the organization does not want that. So before the organization onboards any vendor, we need to ensure that whatever data or whatever client data they are going to be sharing with you, you need to give them assurance that you have enough resources, enough techniques to consider that not exposed to third party. All right. So one instance whereby banks get exposed and then they are being fined. Okay. So you don't want that to happen because you have outsourced some engagement to a client. All right. To a third party client. All right. So that's what a software report attested for you. Okay. Now, what does SOC 3 mean? SOC 3 is similar to SOC 2. Okay. It is similar to SOC 2. It is similar to SOC 1. But it does not give you a detailed understanding, all right, of the design of control and test performed by a service auditor. Why SOC 1 and SOC 2 will tell you, demonstrate to you how they have carried out, now I told you that report is not being issued by the third party vendor. All right, if you've been following me, I told you that it is normally done by an external contractor, external audit contractor, probably by a Big Four consultant, by a verified audit consultant as well. All right, so it will show you a detailed step by step of how they've carried out their test to certify that that particular third party vendor is actually performing those controls. Okay. Now, that SOC 3 is what we call an abridged version. An abridged version. So when we say abridged version, we're just saying that it takes parts of SOC 1 and it takes parts of SOC 2 and it merges it together. All right. So when you request for SOC 3, it will only give you a summarized version of SOC 1 and a summarized version of SOC 2. So it is important that if you want to request for a third-party vendor attestation, request for a SOC 1 and SOC 2 report so that you can have a detailed understanding of what the third-party vendor is bringing to the table in terms of control. All right. So ICAN is saying that we also have some somebody saying something. Okay. So ICAN is also saying that we also have some additional third-party reports, such as penetration test, security assessment. So I mentioned earlier that there's something we call ISO 27001, the Information Security Management System. So it says that we are going to evaluate the information security in terms of network support, the overall information security architecture of the vendor. All right. So you get that report as well. All right. So you also rely on your internal processes for handling qualified opinions from the assessors. So in some companies, there's something we normally call we can have something we call vendor management committee that sits to decide on the basis that should we go with this vendor or not. Okay. So now, having said that, there's something we have now called cloud governance. Cloud governance. So cloud is another is one part of ISACA that is important for us to actually discuss. Okay, it is important for us to properly discuss. Okay, cloud governance. So cloud governance. So what is cloud? To start with, what is cloud? So most times when we talk about cloud, some people still believe that cloud is one information that we store, maybe it's one information that we store in the atmosphere, okay? Or maybe it's one information that we store up here in the sky that we go and obtain, okay? So when you hear cloud, everybody just say cloud. What does this cloud really mean? Okay. So cloud is not one information that you put on the sky. It's not one information that you put in Jupiter or one information that you put in one planet. Cloud is you saying that I want to put my information in a server, but not within my jurisdiction. I want to put it somewhere, let's say somewhere in North Europe, somewhere in North America, somewhere in Asia. Okay. So when you engage the service of providers like Microsoft, Google, who else? Amazon, and the likes of them. So for example, let's not even go far. You have just some of us we have Google Drive now, right? Gmail account that makes it of. So those information, where do you think they are storing? It is not on the cloud. It is storing in one server outside of the jurisdiction. It is not within Nigeria. So it is storing outside of Nigeria in one jurisdiction. All right. So now, what is our duty as an IS auditor? Or let me first of all start with some of us might know what does the server even actually, because I've said the server now. So if I know someone must have read server, what does server mean? So the server is that computer, all right, that keeps your information. So a server is sitting somewhere, all right. So it is sitting, a server can be inside your environment, all right. So if you've been to your IT store very well, so for some of us, if you in a corporate organization, you can try this, all right. You can approach your IT store, your IT department. If ask them if they have a server within the environment, okay. If there is a server within the environment, tell them you want to probably just take a look at what the server looks like. So that means there's one server inside the environment, all right, and that server is what is speaking to your application, all right. So that server is doing what is hosting an application. So if you have an application that is hosted in the environment, when we say application hosting, we're just saying that there's one machine, one server inside your environment that your application is sitting inside. So because your application is sitting inside the application, it can now what? It can now feed your, it can feed your different computers. That means Mr. A can make use of the application, Mr. B can make use of the application, Mr. C can make use of it because that server is what? It's sitting in the environment. Okay. Now, if anything happens to that server, what happens to the application that Mr. A is making use of? It what? It will shut down. Now, we are now saying that instead of putting that server inside my environment, I want to put it outside my environment. Now, anything that makes me put that server outside my environment, what am I doing? I'm already on the cloud. So I'm taking it in the cloud. So that's what we refer to as cloud. All right. So as long as the server is not within my environment, I can see my server is what? It's in the cloud because I do not have access to it. It's not within my jurisdiction. Okay. But that does not mean that if anything happens to that server outside my environment, the application I'm making will not go down. All right. Now, what's the ability as IT or higher auditor when it comes to cloud environment, cloud services? All right. We need to properly ensure that we manage cloud risk. Okay. So because we are saying that that particular server is not within our environment, it's somewhere outside our geographical location. So how do we manage cloud? Now, ICAN is saying that the strategic direction of the business and IT in general is primary focus when considering cloud computing. It says that as enterprises look to the cloud to provide IT services that traditionally have been managed internally. You remember when I was saying that it's just like you're putting your server inside the environment, all right, and you want to now do what? Take it outside, all right. So as enterprises look to the cloud to provide IT services that traditionally have been managed internally, they will need to make some changes, all right, to help ensure that they continue to meet performance objectives. Their technology provisioning and business are strategically aligned and risk is managed. Okay, so now that we are now taking this into the cloud, how do we now manage our risk effectively? How do we now manage our technology provisioning? When we say technology provisioning, I think how do we onboard our applications into the cloud? Okay, and how do we manage the risk that comes with it? Okay. So now, ensuring that IT is aligned with the business systems that secure and risk is managed can be challenging in any environment and even more complex in a third-party relationship because now Microsoft is not in Nigeria. All right. The servers are not in Nigeria. It's outside Nigeria. You can walk up to your IT guy. So let me tell you, as a matter of fact, it was part of what I did when I was paying for CISA. All right. So it helped me a lot because I was very curious. I want to know if what I'm actually even doing, if what they're actually teaching us in class, if it is actually even applicable, practical, capable in the recent. So I was looking up to him, okay. So for me, if I would have looked up to him and say, okay, if we are not making use of servers inside the environment, then where is our server? Okay, they say, okay, our server is in the cloud. So that cloud, where is it? Okay, so that server now, where is our cloud? Is it in North America? So you can ask them. You say they will tell you that it's not in Nigeria. It's somewhere in North America. It's somewhere in North Asia. They will tell you somewhere. They will tell you the geographical location where their server is. Okay. So now we are saying that typical governance activities such as goal setting, policy and standard development, defining rules and responsibilities, and managing it must include special considerations when dealing with cloud technology work and provider. So it means that we need to properly ensure that we really need this cloud environment for what we onboard it. Okay. Now, Asaka is also saying that the cloud presents many unique situations for business to address. One significant governance issue is that business unit personnel previously forced to go to IT for service can now bypass IT and receive directly can receive service directly from the cloud. Okay, so what that is just saying is that instead of you going through um instead of you going through so your local IT, you can decide to go to Microsoft directly and get the same thing you would get from local services. Okay, so instead of you going through some local IT vendors, you can go directly to the cloud if you have the in-house resources, and then you get the same thing. Okay, now we are not saying that in managing your relationship with third party, you need to ensure that you have sufficient technical skills, okay, to monitor requirements of your agreement with the third party vendor. So whether you're having arrangement with Microsoft or Google or whichever of them, you have an already drawn SLA that you can use to activate your clause anytime you do not get your services as deemed required. Okay, so now we are not saying that some consideration must be made when you are addressing some of these areas in cloud. You need to develop a cloud risk management strategy, okay, which ensures that at every point in time you can manage your cloud risk. So let me give you an example. So when you are onboarding your cloud environment, you need to ensure that, because I told you that your cloud is somewhere probably in North America or Asia. All right, so you need to ensure that you are not only residing your cloud in one place. You need to ensure that you have another backup of that cloud in another region. Okay, so it means that if my cloud is in North America, okay, what I'm saying is that I don't want my information to be in North America alone. I want it to also be in East America or West America or North Europe. Why? Because if the servers, I've told you that these servers they are something you can see. All right. So there's something called data center. If you have been data center before, you will see how they arrange some of these servers and all of that. Okay. So if you I think domain 4 we talk on data center. Yeah, I believe in domain 4 we talk on data center very well. So now, if you know that your servers are stationed in Europe, in North Europe, you need to ensure that you have another backup of those servers in America. Why? Because those servers are machines and they can break down. Okay, I think the early this year or something, I was reading a post that said that some Microsoft service just went down. All right, so and Microsoft now said that it does not apply to all of the business. It only applies to businesses that their services are sitting on North Europe 1 or something like that. So those were the services that were affected. Okay, so it probably means that probably those businesses did not probably maintain a proper cloud risk management strategy to ensure that when they were onboarding, although it might come at some additional cost, but you need to ensure that if the cost, you need to outweigh. That's what we call cloud risk management strategy. You need to outweigh your cost to risk benefit. To say, for example, if you are a bank or you are into fintech, if your service, can you afford for your service to go down by 5 hours or by 10 hours? If you cannot afford it, then why not just ensure that you also have a replica of your cloud service somewhere, so that once the first one goes down, you can do what? You can pick up from the other one. Okay. Now, you also need to do what? Implement strong cybersecurity controls. All right. So I think in terms of cybersecurity, that will be very proprietary in domain 5. So strong cybersecurity service ensure that you have enough cybersecurity controls. The firewalls, your network devices are updated properly. All your protocols must be updated, and several controls like that we have in cybersecurity. Okay. You need to also do what? Ensure that you manage cloud resilience, outsourcing, vendor locking, and concentration risk. Now, when we talk about cloud resilience, outsourcing, vendor locking, so there are two things here: cloud resilience and outsourcing, vendor locking and concentration risk. You see, when it comes to cloud resilience and enforcement, I just think that it's just similar to what I just explained, so that if my server, when we say business resilience, I'm sure we're going to deal with it in Domain 4 very well. Business resilience is just saying that if I'm a business now, if anything happens to my business, the day to day, can I recover back in the next 5 minutes? That's what business resilience is. Okay. And now when we now come to cloud resilience, I'm saying that if this cloud goes down to zero in the next 5 minutes, can my system come back? Okay. If your system cannot come back in the next 5 minutes, it means that your cloud is not resilient. So you need to now adjust your cloud resilience strategy to ensure that you have additional resources somewhere in the cloud as well, so your system can come back in the next 5 minutes. Now, in terms of vendor locking and concentration, you are saying that as you are putting your services on the cloud, can you also ensure that you have your services somewhere else? Because if you put your services only on the cloud, so there's something we call multi-cloud strategy. That means you can use 2 clouds. Okay, that means you can be using Google Cloud and Microsoft Cloud, all right? So and Azure. So you can. So I've seen businesses that use 2 clouds. Some use Azure and Google. Some use Azure and Amazon. All right, Amazon Web Service. Why? Because they don't want all of their information concentrated into one cloud. Because if one cloud goes down today, if one service goes down today, let's say both every of the resources that is depending on it, like when that cloud goes down today, what is the escape route? So that's what we normally call vendor locking. When you are relying solely on one vendor, then it means the vendor is like the alpha and omega of your life. That means without the vendor, you cannot do anything. If anything happens to that vendor today, what happens to your service? All right, so you need to avoid vendor locking. So you need to also ensure that your staff have adequate skill sets to manage your cloud risk. All right, so in terms of cloud risk, right, ensure that ensure that you bring in, so that's why you have people we call the cloud engineers. Okay, we have cloud engineers that are the ones that they know the nitty-gritty of cloud. They help you to manage your cloud risk properly. Okay, so in terms of when you're now sorting your cloud service, we discussed it before that you need to ensure that you have SLAs and operating level agreements such that everybody can manage your expectations. All right, so and there also the clear rules and responsibilities for decision making, dispute management, demand management, and service delivery. Okay, so it also helps you to allocate resources, expectations, and service control, because in cloud, for every service that you use in cloud, you are being charged. Okay, so you need to ensure that for every service that you're using on the cloud, you are properly monitoring them. Okay, so there's something we call capacity and good planning. Okay, so capacity and good planning just means that as your business continues to expand, okay, you also do what you expand your operations. Okay, so if you have, for example, if you have only one application that you are using in the organization, and you have only one application support, okay, so what you're saying is that by the time your business is expanding, you are saying that you need to bring on board more staff, all right, bring on board new servers, so that that can accommodate your business that was expanding. So that's what we call capacity and good planning. All right. So now let's look at something we call third-party service delivery management. All right. So when it comes to third-party service delivery management, we are just saying that for every enterprise using the service of third parties, should have a service delivery management system in place to implement and maintain the appropriate level of information security and service delivery in line with third-party service delivery agreement. So I just saying in essence that for every services that you have engaged your third party vendor, all right? So still on third party, you need to ensure that you have a service delivery management to enforce that monitoring performance. Okay, to enforce that service monitoring. And what are they doing? What is your service delivery management doing? It is trying to what? Monitor service performance levels to ensure adherence to the agreements. Okay, it is also trying to what? To review service reports that a third party produces and arrange regular progress meetings as the agreement requires. So from time to time, you would like to have probably some meetings with your third party vendor to check updates on what they are currently doing, what is required, and if you probably want to change some things within the within your service delivery, within their service delivery with you. Okay. So you will also need to regularly provide information about security incidents. All right. So for instance, where they have security incidents. So forget that it's gotten is attention report. All right. So if the service goes down today, you need to provide the information about that incident or what has happened so that you can be aware so you can also tighten up your own security as well. So you also need to review third party audit details and records of security events. All right. So for accountability purpose, every time they log into your system, you need to review audit trails and what they have done. All right, so that you can know the level of what they are doing in your environment. Okay. All right. So now in terms of IT performance and monitoring. Okay. So enterprise, Africa is saying that enterprise recognizes the need to increasingly invest in IT and related technology. With this investment, managers' expectations have increased because it wants to see progress and a return on its investment. Okay. So, stakeholders, who are the stakeholders? The management, the board of directors. Okay. Want to see that even you as the employee are the stakeholder. Want to make sure that this investment is correctly aligned, managed properly, and focusing on what achieving business goals. Okay. Now, how do we now ensure that we ensure IT performance monitoring? We have processes to monitor through what? Through KPIs, that's key performance indicators. We have key performance indicators, just like if I ask everyone of us in our company that do we have KPI? Yes, we all have. That means these are set objectives that you intend to achieve, all right, and this is what you are measured by in the company. We have key risk indicators to say what are those risks that you have in IT. So one of the risks in third party can be probably the number of times that your services fail, all right, the number of times that you have outages, okay, can be can also be that the percentage of time that incidents were not resolved. Okay, so you can have those as your key risk indicator and key controls indicator. So these are what you will be measuring your third party vendors against. Okay, so now what is the key KPI? So we have said that the KPI, ICAN says that the KPI is a measure that determines how well the process is performing in enabling the goal to be reached. Okay, it is a lead indicator of whether a goal will likely be reached and a good indicator of capability, practice, and skills. For example, it's saying that the service delivered by IT is a goal for IT, but the performance indicator and the capability for the business. So this is why performance indicators. So Asaka is saying that in essence that for your KPIs, he's saying that what are those measurements? They are going to be measuring your third party vendor against. Okay. So how are you going to be measuring your third party vendors by your KPIs? And I've just highlighted some of the areas that you can use to measure your that can use to measure your third party what your third party vendor. Okay. So okay. Now if for example, if you don't if in the process of implementation you don't meet the timeline, if your timeline is 2 weeks and you don't meet 2 weeks, what happens to the KPI? -1, because you did not meet the KPI. If, for example, the number of system outage in a month should be less than 1, and then you add 2, what happens? It means that you did not meet your KPI. All right. So this of KPI indicates the manner whether the control process is managed correctly with a certain level of quality. Okay. So what does KRI mean? All right. KRI provide an early warning. So you see, KRI is just saying that before those issues from third party arises, how do we monitor against it? So before the system goes down completely, what are those indicators that we can look at to say, before this thing happens, so what are those indicators that we can use that we can take a look at before it happens? For example, now, if an organization is probably helping you to manage your network resources, and then all of a sudden you're having an increase in phishing attempt. Okay, so what is going to be like what is going to be an indicator for the mining? Is an indicator that if this thing is happening like this, we're having phishing attempts, we should start getting warmed up for the day that we are going to be attacked. Okay, let's say for example, start having some website or some email addresses that we don't know. They start sending us phishing attempts. All right, it's an indicator that one day very soon we'll be getting hacked. Okay, so that's what it means. Or for example, in a situation whereby we outsource our service to the cloud provider, and let's say that for example, today we need their help to help us solve something. All right, and instead of them to reply us, they said that if their response time is 5 minutes, and then they're not replying us 10 minutes, they start replying us 10 minutes, at a point 15 minutes, 20 minutes, then the stage between that 10, 15, 20 minutes. It is an indicator to the management that one day, these guys are not going to respond to us in 1 day. They're not going to respond to us in the next 24 hours, in the next 2 days. All right, so those security indicators, they give early signs, they give early signals. Or for example, the service starts going down. Let's say it goes down for 5 minutes, it comes back again. It goes down for 10 minutes, it comes back again. That should be a key risk indicator that one day this guy's service is going to go down for 24 hours and we're not going to be able to have access to our application. Okay, so that is what a key risk indicator actually represents. Okay, so now when we now say key control indicators, so we discussed key performance indicator, key risk indicators, and now we are discussing key control indicators. So key control indicators is saying that it's measuring how well a control performs in reducing causes, consequences, or the likelihood of it. Okay, so now we said that in our key indicators that if they don't reply on time, okay, so what is the key control indicator that we put on check in that regard? Okay, so a key control indicator can be that so the key control indicator can be that at any point in time, ensure that you regularly follow up with this vendor, okay, to know what is going on. All right, don't just follow up to know what is going on with the vendor. That can be like a control to that regard. Okay, so Another key control indicator can be, say for example, that system is running an outage of 5 minutes, 10 minutes. What do we start doing? We start looking for an alternative. Okay, we start looking for an alternative to say, okay, for us to control this is what we are going to. This is what we are going to put in place. We are going to start looking for another vendor that can supply our needs. So ICAN is saying that for a key control risk indicator to be considered effective, it should be constantly measured. All right. Additionally, it should be based on acceptable practices, be useful for internal and external comparison, and be meaningful to IT customers and sponsors. Okay. So we're not saying that an IT auditor should ensure that performance metrics cover the following. Okay. The impact on long-term objective, performance against short-term business and IT plans, also risk and compliance with regulations. So what we are saying is that for your metrics to be fine, you need to consider the impact on long. So you are saying that you need to look for alternatives. So I'm saying that if in the course of you looking for that alternative, you need to consider your technical expertise, consider your financial plans. All right, are you able to incur this cost now? And then look at your operational goals. Do you think that it will be necessary to also onboard additional vendor? Okay, so these are how you measure your key control indicator. So now, performance optimization. Okay, in ICAN, it says performance measures how well a system works, including user and stakeholder satisfaction. Okay. So performance optimization is the process of improving the efficiency of an information system while maintaining or increasing the party size performance to the highest level possible with minimal additional investment in IT infrastructure. So we are just saying that how do you optimize your performance? Okay, how do you get the best out of your performance? Okay, so it's by what? Ensuring consistent monitoring. Okay, the only way you monitor your performance consistently, that is when you can get the best out of your performance monitoring. So for you to get critical success factor, for your business, what do you actually require? Okay, so I just want to say my case. So so where have I been reading from? 28th edition. I think I mentioned that earlier before we come. Okay. So what are your critical success factor in your organization? All right. So your critical success factor are dependent on some variables. Okay. And what are the variables that are critical success factor are dependent on? Okay. So the first one we have is leadership support. So you see, in terms of IT governance, yeah, I think when you get to part B, when the other tutor comes, you would understand this part well enough. So you see, in terms of IT governance, if your if your leadership is not supporting what you are actually doing, there's no way everything you are trying to plan, there's no way it's going to work, because aside from even the fact that they are the ones providing aside from the fact that they are the ones providing you that that money, that fund, and all of that. If you don't, okay, yeah. So aside from that, they are the ones providing you that business, that financial support. If you don't like properly get their support, all right, everything you are doing will just be like time consuming and to be complex. Okay, so it's important for you to have a sort of senior leadership so that they can be involved in setting a good place for peer optimization providing resources, and communicating the benefits of process optimization to the enterprise, and assuming ultimate accountability for the optimization program. So we are saying that for it to have effective process optimization, the KPIs, for the KPIs, KRIs, and KCIs to work, you need to get what your leadership support. Then, before you can also optimize the process, there's supposed to be something we call your clear goals and objectives. Okay, so your clear goals and objectives, your clear goals and objectives is just saying that before you have to define your clear goals. So what do you intend to achieve if you bring in this process optimization, all these KRIs, KCIs, and all of that? You want to probably ensure that you are monitoring it before they occur. All right, you are monitoring performance before they occur, and that you are putting controls in place before those risks occur. So you also want to bring about data-driven decision making. They are saying that process optimization must be based on data, not just instinct. So we are just saying that for data-driven decision to be effective, for your decision making to be effective, it has to be data. What is the number of data? Out to the service provider, that is it. All right. Time that vendor is supposed to take to okay, so it is based on data-driven decision making. So for it to also employee involvement, because at the end of the day, the employee are those that are going to work on that process. They are the ones that are going to help you to improve them. All right. So they are the ones that are going to monitor the KPIs, the KRS, and the KCIs. If you don't bring in your employee into the process, it is as much as you not doing anything. Then when it comes to process improvement, you need to also, because once you are identifying this risk, all right, you are batting them. What are you trying to do? You are improving your process. Okay. Now, I think that IT is a complex and technical topic. Therefore, it is important to maintain transparency by expressing goods, metrics, and performance reports in common, understandable terms that are meaningful to stakeholders, so that appropriate action can be taken. Okay, so we're saying that for it to be transparent in terms of your IT performance measurement, you need to ensure that your KPIs, your KRIs, and your KCIs, they are transparent. Okay. So we talk about methodologies and tools. All right. So we have something called the plan, do, check, act. So the plan is to say, in terms of continuous improvement, you want to establish the objective and process necessary to deliver results according to expected output. So for every of your business decisions, okay, every of your business processes, you need to plan them accordingly. Okay, you cannot just wake up one day and say you want to implement a process improvement process. No, you need to plan it accordingly. Okay, you need to put in some output expectations. All right, what do you intend to achieve from this scorecard they are putting out? All right, now implement the plan. So the plan you put in place now, you need to now implement it appropriately. So for those PRIs and everything you put out, so you need to implement them, collect the data for charting and analysis. So let's say every month, so the performance of the vendors, you want to collate them and then put it into the chart and then analyze. Then check. You now study the actual result. and compare them against the expected. What are you actually doing? Then ask, you now request for corrective action. So from what you have evaluated from checking it, so how do you now collect those how do you now collect those correct those actions that you get? Okay, so that's the art. All right. So now we are saying that using the PDCA, that's the plan, do, checkers, it helps to reassess project direction at points through development life cycle. Okay, so we are saying that if you are onboarding a vendor, for example, and the vendor is trying to help you build an application, so we are saying that this plan checkers can help you to assess the project direction. Because, for example, now, if you have KPI for the vendor, okay, that this is what you're supposed to follow, this is the delivery time, this is when you're supposed to finish the application that you are developing for an organization, okay. What have you, or let's say, the plan do checkers will help you to monitor them effectively and help you to reassess your direction. So because in your clause you must have put that if they are not messing up the timeline, you can do what you can switch over to another vendor. All right. So the plan checker will help you to quickly reassess that project and say, okay, we'll split into another vendor, right? So I believe this will be dealt properly in domain 3. So in terms of approaches and techniques, so we also have some other approaches and techniques. All right. So because apart from you using what was it called? So apart from you using what do you call it? Using the KPIs, the KI, and the KCI, we also have approaches such as Six Sigma. So let's look at all of it. So Six Sigma are proven quantitative data-driven analysis that basically applied to IT. It helps to implement a measurement-oriented strategy focused on process improvement and defect reduction. Okay, a Six Sigma defect defined at any formal specification. Okay, so a Six Sigma is just like it's a tool. All right, let's say these are the 6 important things that we're looking at. Okay, so like the way we have KRI, so these are the 6 important boxes that we're looking at Six Sigma. Okay, so anything outside of these boxes, we are not using it to measure our vendor. Okay, so anything outside of this Six Sigma, there are things that are data driven. You're only putting in things that are data driven inside these boxes. So anything outside of these that are not data driven, we are not measuring it. All right. So we also have agile methodology.
Sorry, excuse me. I didn't understand the explanation for Six Sigma. Don't know what that means.
Okay.
Apologies.
Okay. So I said that Six Sigma, according to ICAN says that Six Sigma, they are proven quantitative process analysis and improvement that easily applies to IT. So I'm saying that let's say that we have 6 boxes. All right, 6 boxes. So those 6 boxes represent objectives that are data driven. So I think that anything that are not data driven, that does not add value, we are not going to bring them into this box. Okay, so we are limiting ourselves to only items that are data driven and add value. So for example, I know when I was explaining data driven process, I was saying that let's say the number of outages that we have in a month, that's data driven. I also said that the number of the percentage of completion time, that's another data driven. Another one can also be the number of time it takes for the vendor to respond. That is also data driven, and more like that. So if you have those 6 measurements, we are saying that anything outside of these 6 measurements that are not data driven, we're not going to put them into the boxes. All right, so that's how That's how the field now works for in terms of IT. Okay, I hope that is clear. So in terms of agile methodology, we are saying that business agility or agile is often described as a mindset or a way of working that emphasizes flexibility when delivering value to the enterprise. Okay, so agile aims to deliver product and service earlier in small increments instead of all at once and much later. In this way, IT can adjust the delivery based on changing needs and business requirement. All right. So what we are just saying is that in terms of agile methodology, we are saying that you have different let's say you have a project that you are developing. Okay. So you've categorized those systems to say so you can have an agreement with the vendor. So, okay, instead of us saying that you want to measure it overall, I say maybe it will take you 6 months to complete this project. So why not let's break it down into a month? Okay, so let's say in a month, let's review what have you done. So based on what you've done in the month, we score you. Month 2, based on what you score, based on what you've done in month 2, we score you. So that is agile. We are looking at building them in smaller parts instead of what overall side of it. Okay. So some of the advantages of agile is what is customer collaboration. It helps you to gather requirements and provide feedback and ensure that final products meet the need, because you can quickly know that product meet the need, because before getting to that final part, because you are breaking them down into smaller parts, you can quickly know whether they meet their need or not. Okay, so you also have others such as iterative development, right? Breaking down different smaller iterations, which you explained. Self-organizing teams, all right. So this helps cross-functional teams to collaborate closely. All right, that means in agile development, because you've divided your project into different methodologies, different processes, steps, different things can meet on month one. You can shuffle your team to meet in month two and all of that. So it also helps for personal feedback because you've broken it down, you are getting feedback from month. So I can get month one feedback to development two, month three, and like that. So flexibility, instead of a rigid plan, because you've broken it down, if you are using an approach for month one and you see that it is not working, you can do what? You can actually change back to another approach in month two. Okay. Emphasis on simplicity is also very simple. Okay. So it helps you to minimize waste because it's broken it down. So those efforts that would waste the time, you will not probably, or you will not include them into the process. Okay, so we have the last part today, which is the IT balance scorecard. So the IT balance scorecard is a management evaluation technique for assessing IT functions and processes. So this one goes beyond the traditional financial evaluation, supplementing it with measures concerning user satisfaction and the ability to innovate in the future. All right. So this balance scorecard, right? It drives your enterprise towards optimization of IT, allowing strategic growth with keeping on evaluation related, perspective in balance. So the balance scorecard is just saying that you are looking at your IT function, you are putting your IT function, okay, side by side with the with your strategic goals. Okay, so this is your IT function side, and this is your strategic goals. Then, if your IT function isn't meeting up with your strategic goals, okay. So, for example, you've outsourced your IT function. Now, your outsourcing isn't meeting up with your strategic goals because, for example, in IT governance, the overall objective of IT governance is that can IT continue to support the business to ensure that the business makes that profit? Because between you and I, we know that any business or any organization aside from NGO, the essence is to make profit. So if we are to make profit, how is IT supporting our business? Okay. Now, if IT have said that they want to outsource their function out, some of their function out. So those functions that they've outsourced, how are they meeting the strategic goals of the organization? How is it helping the company to meet its resources? Okay. So for example, we have said that, let's have, you take for example that a fintech company that is into food delivery, okay? If the because we've outsourced our function and our time is going down frequently, do you think that we are going to be able to meet up the strategic function of the business, which is to make profit? No, because the function we have outsourced is not what? It's not making us to make revenue, talk less of what? Of making profits, okay? So if you look at this balance scorecard now, we are looking at the business contribution, okay, user orientation, operational excellence, and future orientation. So business contribution, how does management view the organization? Management is view the organization wants to make profit, okay? How do users view the organization? Users wants to ensure that they get the best out of your services, okay? I want to ensure that when I order food, it is seamless for me. Operational excellence, I want to ensure that all efficient IT process, I want to ensure that at every point in time, the customers of the company can get food, all right? And future orientation, how well is IT positioned to meet what? Future needs. So how do we now continue to evolve to ensure that we improve more on our processes, okay? So, all right. So that is what the balance scorecard means. All right. So it's a combination of four things. All right. The management, users that want to make profits, users that want to order food from your application, IT that want to ensure that there's no downtime, and then also ensuring that you can continue to meet future your future needs. Okay. So so in comparison with your portfolio management, so the difference is that in portfolio management and balance scorecard, while your portfolio management contains everything, including your scorecard, okay? Your portfolio management is saying that I don't have only scorecard in my portfolio. I have other things inside my portfolio. I have other applications, other resources in my application. So based on the feedback that I'm getting, okay, from the balance scorecard, from the KRI, from the KPIs, from the Six Sigma, all right, so depends on what are those techniques that you want to make use of. Are you going to make use of balance scorecard or key risk indicators or KPI? So all of these are my portfolio management. So based on the feedback that I'm getting from, let's say, the balance scorecard, okay, I can now begin to adjust my portfolio. All right, it's okay. Can we do away with this vendor? Can we onboard another vendor? Can we add an additional vendor? Okay, so my feedback based on my balance scorecard helps me at the end of the day. My balance
Hello, sir.
scorecard.
Can you hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you.
I've been raising up my hand since. I think I don't know why it is coming from my end only. Yeah, it's been break off, on and off, on and off. I don't know whether it is coming from my end only. And secondly, can you hear me, please?
Yeah, I can hear you.
I thought there was supposed to be a break by 4.
Yeah. This is the last part. We are going on the break now. Yeah, we're going on the break. This is the last part. So let's just wrap up. I'm not saying that in terms of my portfolio manager, I'm just saying that for your portfolio management, you have all your resources and everything. So just ensure that everything you're putting inside your portfolio, you can quickly adjust it based on on feedback and all of that. So that's everything to manage your resources. So at the end of the day, what are we trying to achieve? I'm trying to limit our risk, okay? I'm trying to achieve the highest quality of output. And don't forget, at the end of the day, we're also trying to limit cost. So So that's what we're trying to achieve with our talking of our vendor management. So I think that brings us to the end of the class today on domain 2. So I think we should go on break now. Yeah. So please, are there questions from anybody before we go on break? Okay. So I believe there are no questions. So we can go on break now. So I believe we'll meet back by 5 p.m. for domain 4. All right. Thank you everyone.